Hi, my name is KT and welcome to my YouTube channel. I started this YouTube channel so that I can share my own personal experiences with personal finances and life. And in general, I just believe that when we have more information, especially when it's simple and not complicated, then you can make more well-informed decisions about your own life. And while I'm learning this information, I also would like to share it with you. And so in this first video, I thought it would be a really great idea to share with you some things that I really wish that I perhaps have learned from school. And many of these things, I either just learned it myself or I learned it on places like YouTube. The first thing I wish I learned about and really understood was the power of compound interest, and as simply as possible, that is the idea or concept that if you put money into a savings account or some type of investment like stocks, something that pays you interest for it, then the longer that it's in that type of account, the longer that it takes for your money to compound interest, and the longer it does that, the more your money will be worth in the future. And it's something that I know I've had heard about, but it never really stuck with me because I never learned about it in a financial aspect. It was like being taught about it in a math class where it was a little blurb in the corner of the book, and it didn't really hit me when it's talking about, oh, this could potentially be your money. The second thing I probably just wish I learned in school was that you need to save and or plan for retirement. As far as school goes, I remember learning about Social Security. And once again, it was not necessarily in a financial aspect. It was from my history class. It was one of my history classes. I'm pretty sure it was in high school. And it was just talking about Social Security being created for people, entering into retirement age. And so you learn about that and you think, oh, that's great. The government, my government in my country, has this thing called Social Security that is a great safety net for people when they retire. That's great because, we no longer have pensions, many companies at least. Many companies do not have pensions, and so that's good. There you go. And then, when you become my age, you learn that for many people, it's not enough to retire on Social Security alone, or that there are other steps you would need to take in order to use that Social Security money as wisely as possible if that was the only thing you were planning to live on. And with that, I mean not having perhaps a payment for where you're living, and so owning your house outright or having somewhere that you could live absolutely, bare bones minimum cost so that your Social Security can go farther. Not having a car payment, not having debt in general. I know many people who are planning to carry their student loans till they die. And so imagine if you were in that position and then you only had Social Security to live on. It becomes more difficult. It definitely becomes more difficult. And I know there are a lot of people who have not thought about that, and I am glad I have started to think about that myself. Something I'll certainly share on this channel is a little bit of my husband and mine's debt journey, but I think we're close to being out of debt, and so it's very exciting, and it's just one less thing that can be checked off the list when it comes to our retirement planning, which is something we're thinking about because we do not want to carry, student loans for a long time, or, have a car payment or a mortgage when we would like to retire, because it will be difficult. And the next thing, which will be our third thing, that I wish I had learned in school was how to buy a car. And I know for many people, when I was going to school, their first car was gifted by their parents. I will say I also fall into that category, and I would say I was even more far removed from the process because I remember just coming home and there like being a car in the driveway, and I was like, okay, this is great. There's a car here. I think it's mine. Let me go talk to the parents, see if this car is mine. It was my car. But I know for some, they actually went to the used car dealership with, their parents, or their parents asked them to look for the car online, and the parents would help them kind of scope it out and get the car. And so I will say, most of the time, people are learning this from home, kind of, about buying a car. Where I think it becomes dangerous for people is when you're learning how to buy a car from a car dealership. And so let's say it's the first time you're buying a car. Of course, the car dealership is going to tell you, oh, it's fine, everyone's taking out these 5-year loans, not a big deal, and the payments are going to be so low, you can definitely manage it. And that may be true, and you may very well be able to manage it. You may still have amazing cash flow coming in, but I just do not like the idea that the business that is profiting off of your business is the one that's also teaching you a big part of financial responsibility. I think there is a huge conflict of interest there, and I would rather, hopefully, great that I know a lot of parents are taking that responsibility to kind of guide people how to do that. But let's just say if it was like in a school environment, it's not that the school is telling you what type of car to buy, or it's more just how to understand those payments. Is that something you really want to have for 5 years? Is it worth it? Talking about the value of the car depreciating, looking at the statistics of new versus used cars, that type of information, I think that a school can provide in very unbiased ways in personal finance classes. And there might be other subjects that kids don't need in schools. I know I could have knocked off a few classes and would have gladly taken a personal finance class. And for this next one, I actually asked one of my cousins who graduated this year from high school, something that she wished she would have learned from school. And the one thing she said was, in general, how to manage her money and credit. And as you'll learn on this channel, I'm not a huge fan of credit myself, but I understand needing to know about it, especially today, because everyone's going to tell you you can't live without credit, you need credit, there's a such thing as good credit and bad credit. If you could learn about it in an unbiased way, meaning not someone who is paid on your ability to acquire credit, aka banks or the credit card companies, they're sending you these advertisements in the mail, or the person at Macy's who's just honestly selling you a credit card, then I just feel that more people will be better prepared, and there's not that ginormous conflict of interest that we're all blinded to because it's just constant advertising just coming right at us. And so she mentioned that, I will say here, I'm not a huge fan of credit, but once again, if there's just a basic, just statistical knowledge about credit and understanding credit cards and really how that affects people long term, I think there's a way that that could be implemented in schools just as a good thing. I don't know, that's my opinion. So it's not that any one of these items are more important than the others, it just so happens that I went out of order. But I also believe that, or not even believe, but I think it'd be beneficial if we learned how to do our taxes and understand, just in general, doing taxes before we have to file our first income tax. I remember when I started working, the first couple of years that I was working, I did my taxes with my mom. She claimed me as a dependent, and I never basically had to look at it whatsoever. It was probably just a couple of years ago that I finally just thought to myself, you know what? I wonder if I could do my taxes myself. And thing number one, it was easier than I thought. Thing number two, I did not have to pay anyone to do the taxes. Thing number 3, there is free software available on the IRS site to do your taxes and walk you through it so that potentially you would not need to pay anyone. There are limitations on that tax software. For example, I believe you can't make over 60 or 80 something $1,000 to use the free version of these programs that are available. So spoiler alert, I'm under that limit, and so I have never had to pay for that software that I've used. I will say I've used TurboTax in the future. There are other ones available. I know there have been hard feelings on TurboTax and there's been a lawsuit with them, but I personally have never paid to do my taxes using TurboTax. I'm using that free software available on the IRS website. And so I just believe that if taxes, which is the responsible thing for all citizens to do, mandatory as well for us all to do, that then, it would be nice if we were taught how to do it instead of, having to very well rely on some other business to always do this for you. And also, I think there is a ginormous market, especially in lower income areas, where tax professionals are preying on people there saying, I will get you the absolute best tax refund, and all you have to do is pay me 10% or pay me $150. I had a situation with a family member, not myself. She had a situation where she went to a tax person, and when the tax professional found out how much her and her partner were getting, he decided to change his rate from the flat fee that he wanted to charge to a percentage to get a part of her tax refund. That is despicable and terrible. And if I'm honest, their taxes would have been simple to do. They have a child, there are 2 of them, basic income, they're not contractors, they're working as employees for a company. That can be entered very easily into those tax forms just by answering these yes or no questions. But there is so much ambiguity towards taxes and so much fear of the IRS that no one wants to do it. Even just a basic understanding about it, then there would not be all this fear and anxiety towards the possibility of doing it yourself, and that people would be more empowered. The more empowered that we are with this information, in general, it's going to be better for ourselves, our families, and our communities. And the last thing here that I do really wish that we learned a little bit about in schools are the difference between different types of accounts. And with that, I mean, there's checking accounts, there's savings accounts, there's money market accounts, and there's credit accounts. There may be more, and that's the thing. I learned about money market accounts perhaps a year or so ago. There was a period of time that I was working for a financial institution, and they had a money market account, and I knew nothing about it whatsoever. I worked in their credit department. I'm guilty. I worked there, but they had a money market account, and people would call and they would ask about their money market account. And of course, it's not my department, and I'd say, you would need to call that department because I have no idea what you're talking about. I did not say that, but I would just say, oh, you'll have to call that department. I am so sorry, I cannot help you. And even now, I know there is a lot of ambiguity with knowing what type of account to open, which one you really need, and once again, the issue with just walking into a bank, the same bank your mother had and the same one your great grandfather had, The issue with just walking into any old location is that they're going to cater the information that you're receiving based on their products, which is not bad. It's just that you're not going to get the full picture and understanding and knowing the power behind having each of these different accounts. For example, when I was growing up, I went into a bank to cash a check and they convinced me to open an account, which wasn't a terrible thing, but I honestly did not need one. And I will say I'm closing finally the account. It's been many years, but I am finally closing the account because the bank account just honestly isn't great. It doesn't give amazing benefits like it shows on the commercials. I've grown out of it and I found an account that is a lot better. And with that, you don't learn that from the bank. The bank is not going to tell you, yeah, our competitors have better things than us. And they're not. If they do not have a money market account, they're going to sell you their savings account, which is going to have a ridiculously low interest rate that you'll start receiving those little interest payments. However, if you had a money market account, you may be able to get a little bit more interest. And those are things you do not learn from school, and you also are not going to learn it from random businesses, because their job for the most part is not to fully educate you on the concepts, but rather their products. And so if we were taught about basic concepts that we are experiencing in life, I think it'd be so powerful really for our society in general. There wouldn't be that mask that we all have to pull off individually. It could just be a collective. We have stripped away the confusion and now we can all move forward. So those are just my thoughts on things that I really would have appreciated learning from schools. Much of it I learned on the school, of Hard Knocks, and that was fine, and no hard feelings, I guess. But certainly, if you have any suggestions, leave them in the comments below, and I am excited to share another video with you. Thanks, and have a great day.